Let's talk about cryptids. Welcome to Weary Lore and welcome to my Cryptids of America series. In this series, I will be introducing you to one cryptid from each state in America, giving you a short explanation of their history and story, and then giving my own opinion on the cryptid, where I think it came from, and what I think it could be. Now, I am aiming to not do well-known cryptids. I want to learn about new cryptids and pass that knowledge on to you. I won't be talking about Sasquatch or the abominable snowman or how I think they're the same thing. I won't be talking about El Chupacabra or the Wendigo. We all know about those cryptids. Let's learn about some new ones. In this series, I will be doing 5 states in each episode with a total of 10 episodes. Let's get into it. Welcome to episode 8 of Cryptids of America. Today we will be exploring cryptids from Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and South Carolina. Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. Had to do it. If it's going to be stuck in my head for a week, it's going to be stuck in yours too. Other than that catchy little tune, I know very little about Oklahoma. The only kind of cryptid or legend that I know about this state is a light that you can see that just disappears when you get closer to it. It apparently is called the Hornet Spook Light. I saw it on one of the many ghost hunting television shows of the 2000s, and as far as I know, it's been debunked. The most popular cryptid of Oklahoma is a tie. Of course, there's its version of Bigfoot, Boggy Bottom Bigfoot, and the Oklahoma octopus? Yep, an octopus in a landlocked state with no ocean. Who would have thunk? Oklahoma has a myriad of legends that I would love to talk about, but that's not what we're here for. Researching the remaining cryptids in this area, one really stuck out to me. The Deer Woman has taken on legendary status. She's a mythological being that does not only inhabit the state of Oklahoma, but she's been sighted there many times. The Deer Woman will appear just off the beaten path, calling out to men of a very certain type. She's described as looking like a completely normal, beautiful woman, except for her feet. Her feet, instead of being human feet, are hooves. Some stories also say that she has horns hidden in her hair in this form. Once these abnormalities are noticed, the Deer Woman will fully transform into a doe and trample the man. Why does this happen? It's because of the type of men that she calls out to. She calls out to abusers and adulterers, those who have hurt women and children. This is her legend in Oklahoma. There's a lot more to her in other states, but she doesn't show these attributes in Oklahoma. There have been reported sightings of her in near modern day. The first sighting is not dated, but is recent enough that the person in the sighting was driving a vehicle. This person was guarding the powwow grounds of an Indian tribe. While there, he saw a woman walking in the snow wrapped in a blanket. When he approached her, he saw that her tracks were not human, but hoof prints. He stopped his approach and went back to his vehicle. The second sighting took place around the 60s or 70s. This happened during a football game. Multiple witnesses said that they saw a woman wrapped in a Native American-style blanket among the crowd. Partway through the game, she suddenly moved, running to the top of the bleachers and jumping off, falling 80 feet to the ground. She was unfazed by this and ran off into the woods. In certain legends of the Deer Woman, she does join gatherings. Sometimes she will join a powwow or a dance and simply exist there before leaving. Why she does this, no one knows. Lastly, students tell stories of the Deer Woman, how she waits in the woods and will indiscriminately take teenage boys for being too wild or disobedient to their parents. These tales circulate to this day, frightening children and adults alike. What are my thoughts? The Deer Woman is interesting to me because her existence can mean so many different things. Is she simply a supernatural being who was put on this earth to right the wrongs of men? Is she a once human woman who seeks revenge for her own tormentors never coming to justice? Is she a sign of change and growth? Or is she just another version of the boogeyman? Trying to scientifically explain a creature that could look like a deer woman isn't really possible. Yes, there are cutaneous horns, a disorder that some humans are afflicted with that causes an overgrowth of keratin that can make it look like a person has an animal horn. Could that explain a woman with horns? Maybe. This can also cause the feet to deform due to the overgrowth of keratin. It can happen on any part of the body, actually. But they definitely wouldn't look like perfect hooves. My personal opinion? Native Americans are very spiritual. At some time in their history, their religion created this creature. I cannot speak on if it's a real creature or not, but in this day and age, the deer woman as a cryptid is being used as a cautionary tale. Don't do harm unto others, or karma will come for you. Are you from Oklahoma? Have you ever had an encounter with a deer woman? Let me know. For some reason, I equate beavers with Oregon. I know that it had been, at some point, called the Beaver State. I, innocently, thought that this was because there were a lot of beavers in Oregon. It's actually because of the role beavers played in the state's fur trade when it was being established. That is more disturbing. Overall, Oregon's most popular cryptid is Bigfoot. I expected this and am not in the least bit surprised. Researching cryptids for Oregon was more difficult because everything just seemed to combine the Pacific Northwest, as if it's all one big state. People, let me level with you here. It's getting harder and harder to find cryptids that aren't the regulars and are confined to one state. I would have loved to report on the giant freshwater crustaceans, but there just wasn't enough information on them. The cryptid that I chose for Oregon is an inhabitant of the Pacific Northwest. It's not only local to Oregon. The gumbaroo looks, for all purposes, like a giant black bear, with some issues. The gumbaroo is completely hairless except for prominent eyebrows and hair on its chin, like a beard. Its skin is as black as coal and described as leather-like. Nothing is able to get through it. Rocks, arrows, and bullets just bounce off of it. This cryptid lives in hollowed out or burned out cedar trees. It is said to hibernate for most of the time, but when it comes out, it's insatiably hungry and will eat any living thing that it comes across. The most curious thing about the gumbaroo? It's highly combustible. This creature was blamed for forest fires because of its random combustion. It does not generally attack humans, but if you are in the presence of a gumbaroo while it is burning, it is said that it will cause rubber to adhere to your lungs, and it has been blamed as the cause for tuberculosis in its victims. Sightings of the gumbaroo started in the late 19th and early 20th century. Lumberjacks told stories of seeing the creature before sudden forest fires with devastating results. They reported that they themselves could not fell the creature except with fire. There are some reports that say that's why there are so few now. They have been hunted with fire. In more modern day, a gumbaroo was supposedly not only sighted, but confirmed to be taken down in 1957 by an M-Force agent. It is said that this person destroyed the gumbaroo. Nothing to bring back for proof. Multiple sources said that there have been 5 confirmed sightings since then, but nowhere explained the who, where, what, or when of the sightings. All I could find other than this was the report of an undated sighting from an unnamed person who stated that they saw a gumbaroo eat an entire horse whole, then move on for more food like it was nothing. What are my thoughts? Well, hairless bears exist. They look like they're from another world. Seriously, creepy in their own right. This could be the explanation. Why does this happen? More than one reason. There's a fairly common skin condition called mange. It can cause animals to lose spots of their hair or lose it all over. It's common and it's very contagious. So, if there was one black bear with it in a certain area, many more could contract it. I'm not saying that this explains everything. Having impervious skin is not a natural ability for a bear. Their skin is tough, but it can't make projectiles bounce back. This part of the story could be simple embellishment. I've talked about this with a lot of cryptids. They could just be very simple stories that have been blown out of proportion. But what about their burning bodies causing tuberculosis? Back then, they needed answers to problems they weren't scientifically able to answer yet. Wildfire smoke includes chemical compounds known to occur in tobacco smoke and indoor biomass smoke, which are known factors for tuberculosis infection and disease progression. In the early 20th century, they didn't know that, but it was simply the wildfires. Are you from Oregon? Have you ever had an encounter with the gumbaroo? Let me know. There are two things that I know about Pennsylvania. The first is Hershey. Chocolate. Cheap, delicious, addictive chocolate. Look at me. It's obvious. The second is the squonk. It's the only cryptid I've ever heard of from Pennsylvania. Could I tell you its entire story with no research? Nope. But I've seen and heard of it, and it's one of the most popular cryptids in Pennsylvania. Beyond the squonk, the most popular cryptids of Pennsylvania are Bigfoot, big surprise, and their version of the Loch Ness Monster, the Raystown Ray. The cryptid that I have chosen is another with a kind of silly name. Here's hoping that it's not as disturbing as the last one. The Geewoggle inhabits Clinton County, Pennsylvania. It is a chimera of a creature. It's a cross between a wolf, a goat, and a bird. The Geewoggle is described as a bipedal wolf that stands around 6 feet tall. Its upper body and head are a wolf's body, while its lower body and feet, hooves, are a goat's body. Lastly, it has bird-like claws at the end of its front paws. The Geewoggle is not violent towards humans. It's actually more of a nuisance. It's known to destroy property, damage tools, and frighten animals. If the Geewoggle is sighted by a person, it will dart off at supernatural speeds, and that's for good reason. It's because it's a supernatural creature. The story of the Geewoggle started in the 1800s. Supposedly, Geewoggles were something like a witch's familiar. They would be conjured or created by witches in order to inconvenience a local farmer that had offended or done the witch wrong in some way. Multiple farmers reported sightings of the Geewoggle and its tracks, but claimed because of its supernatural abilities, it was unable to be tracked to be caught. Except for by one man, a man named Luke Hill. The last official sighting of the Geewoggle was in 1909. It was supposedly sighted standing on a building in downtown Lock Haven. However, there are rumors and sightings to this day of bipedal wolves being seen in Clinton County, especially around the grave of a certain individual, Luke Hill. Are these bipedal wolves the Geewoggle, or another cryptid entirely? What are my thoughts? This is absolutely, positively, nothing but a bedtime story. In the official story of the Geewoggle, it was plainly stated that the legend bloomed when an old woman told her grandchildren a bedtime story. One of these grandchildren wrote about this bedtime story in the Keystone Folklore Quarterly when he grew up, and it took off from there. There are no pictures of the destruction, there are no pictures of the tracks, and there aren't even grainy or out-of-focus pictures of the creature itself, even though people claim to see it to this day. This cryptid came to life from a story. It very much makes me think of the rake in modern-day terms. The rake was created for a contest, and it's well established and proven that it was created for a contest. But it has taken on cryptid status with stories of sightings, images, videos. A phenomenon was created from a story. The same thing happened with this cryptid. It just happened further in the past with less technology. Since 2011, the Geewoggle has been the official monster of Clinton County, Pennsylvania. It's a bedtime story that will forever be loved and remembered. But that's all it is, a bedtime story. Are you from Pennsylvania? Have you ever had an encounter with the Giwago? Let me know. Rhode Island might be the smallest state in the United States, but it holds an impressive amount of legends and monsters. If you had asked me to name a single cryptid from Rhode Island, I would have said Bigfoot. And it's only because of the statistical chance that he will show up in every state. Otherwise, I wouldn't know, until I saw the name. I have heard of the Gloucester Ghoul multiple times, but did not know that it made its home in Rhode Island. It seems to be rather popular there as well. Cryptids that I would say match or exceed the popularity of the ghoul would, of course, be Rhode Island's version of Bigfoot, Big Rhodey, or their version of the Loch Ness Monster, which they so eloquently named the Loch Ness Monster. No, I'm not making that up. The cryptid I chose for Rhode Island, I feel, is on the cusp between legend and cryptid, though I'm starting to wonder if there really is such a large difference between the two at all. It seems so often that legend turns into cryptid, turns into legend. The headless skeleton of Swampton is kind of self-explanatory. It's a headless skeleton, but there's more to it than that. The location is just as important as the cryptid itself. The headless skeleton of Swampton is described as a skeleton, sans head, that will appear from within a rock with a blue aura glowing around its bones. It will be lurching to and fro as if struggling out of the ground before soaring up into the sky. Most unusually, or perhaps predictably, this most often happens on foggy, overcast nights. Why is the rock important, you ask? The rock sits at the corner of Indian Road, a large boulder marking the road, and perhaps a mass burial site. Sightings of the headless skeleton of Swampton are more vague, like the other cryptids in this video. They don't have specific dates or names, but there's speculation within all of them. The first sightings of the headless skeleton of Swampton began to occur after a battle, specifically the King Philip's War. Many Native Americans lost their lives during this war, and it is suspected, though not proven, that many of them were buried near the boulder that marks the corner of Indian Road, and that is how the road got its name. This cryptid is believed to be one of those Native Americans, either guarding its comrades or watching over the land stolen from it. The most dramatic sighting that I read about happened to an unnamed road mender in an unknown year. When walking home, he saw something strange sticking out of a ditch and went to see what it was. When he discovered that it was a human skull, he, like the madman he must have been, decided to take it home with him instead of respecting it. Even worse, when his wife wouldn't let him bring it inside, he put it on a pike in his front yard? Seriously? Are you asking to be cursed? That night, there was a terrible storm, and the headless skeleton of Swampton left its post to retrieve its head. The man and woman were terrified, rightfully so, as it caused chaos right outside their home. To this day, this cryptid is seen sitting on top of the rock at the corner of Indian Road on dark, foggy nights. What are my thoughts? I've said it before and I'll say it again. If there's one way to create a vengeful spirit or ghost, should they exist, a violent passing is definitely that way. However, this creature doesn't seem particularly vengeful. The only sighting with any type of violence was when, supposedly, its head was stolen. But there might be a more natural explanation for this. A large part of Swampton consists of wetlands, also known as swamps. There's a phenomenon known as swamp lights or swamp gas that's naturally occurring. This, to this day, isn't fully understood, but it's most likely either caused by methane burps, for lack of a better word, or it's caused by the ignition of gas produced by bacterial decomposition. These swamp lights, or swamp gas, or even will-o'-the-wisp, are usually a combination of blue and green bright flashes of light. It might even flicker like a lantern. This happening on a foggy night would enhance the effect. Obviously, this does not explain a headless skeleton, but the human mind plays tricks on itself. So, maybe one person saw something that they interpreted as a human skeleton, and the story spread. Maybe a skull was even actually found, and the story spread even further, embellished and made more terrifying as it went. I can't definitively say anything. It might be a natural phenomenon, or it might be the spirit of a Native American whose life was taken for their land. Are you from Rhode Island? Have you ever had an encounter with the headless skeleton of Swampton? Let me know. When I began my research into South Carolina's cryptids, I became increasingly confused as to why everyone kept calling it the Palmetto State. Let me be real with you. I did not know what a palmetto was. Apparently they're everywhere in South Carolina? Who knew? But you're not here for my lack of education. Let's talk about the creepy crawlies. During my bopping around researching cryptids, I found that Bigfoot is most likely the most popular cryptid in South Carolina. But the lizard man follows in second? I saw pictures of actual sculptures of this cryptid. Then there was this. Sorry. Now that I'm past that, let's talk about the cryptid that I chose for South Carolina. The Third Eye Man, originally dubbed as the Sewer Man, is a cryptid that inhabits the underground tunnels beneath the University of South Carolina. It is rarely seen outside of these tunnels, and when it is, it's only for food or when the Third-Eyed Man is dropping back into the sewers via a manhole cover. The Third-Eyed Man is described as a man dressed in bright silver. He looks as if he's crippled, but he clearly has to be strong to move a manhole cover. His most identifying feature is his face. It was described, and I'm quoting, as a very disturbing face, grotesque in color and shape, and in the middle of this man's forehead, a third eye. It wasn't a large third eye, but it was clearly there. There is only one report of an attack by the Third Eye Man. When a group of college students found their way into his tunnel, he charged them with a lead pipe, leaving one with minor cuts. Beyond this, he doesn't seem particularly violent, disappearing as soon as possible whenever he is seen. The first sighting of the Third Eye Man is very exact. It occurred on November 12, 1949 at 10:43 p.m. Compared to the vagueness of the previous cryptids, that's on-the-dot timing. During this sighting, 2 male students saw a man dressed in all silver directly opposite the historic Longstreet Theater. The sighting was short, as the man disappeared down a manhole and pulled it close behind himself. It was during this sighting that he was dubbed the Sewer Man. It wasn't until 6 months later, on April 7, 1950, that the Third-Eyed Man was seen again. This sighting was retold by a university police officer who stated that he came upon 2 mutilated chickens behind the Longstreet Theater. After walking to his car to report the scene, he returned to find the Third-Eyed Man huddled over the chickens. It was then that he saw his face, and this cryptid became known as the Third-Eyed Man. Another notable sighting happened in the late 1960s. A fraternity decided to haze some newcomers, and they ran into the Third-Eyed Man, and he attacked them with a lead pipe. It was after this that the tunnels were closed off and made off limits to everyone. But, as college students do, they break the rules, and there are rumors that the Third-Eyed Man still roams the tunnels and sewers under the college, protecting what he believes to be his. What are my thoughts? Well, it sounds like a person. Why he would be wearing all silver? I don't know. Maybe that's all he has. There have been reports of other cryptids that turned out to be real people, homeless or disfigured, who were just trying to live their lives in the only way they could. There was the story of a man who had no face, who took nighttime walks and was given the moniker of the Green Man, or Charlie No Face. He turned out to be real. His name was Raymond Theodore Robinson, and he was disfigured in an electrical accident. but he was given cryptid status for some time. He is not the only person who has been seen as inhuman and been made into something he's not. I wouldn't be surprised if the third-eyed man is one of these people. The human body can take a lot and still survive. The officer who saw him described him as grotesque, and a college student said he looked crippled. This sounds like a person who went through something terrible, and instead of getting the help he desperately needed, he was seen as a monster and treated the same way. Yeah, a heavy way to end the video. But sometimes real life is more disturbing than any imaginary tale. Are you from South Carolina? Have you ever had an encounter with a third-eye man? Let me know. The longer I do this series, the more I wonder what the true meaning behind cryptid really is. The Cambridge Dictionary defines cryptid as a creature that is found in stories and that some people believe exist or say they have seen, but that has never been proven to exist. That's so broad, and it could mean so much. I find myself amazed and highly disturbed by some of the things that I learned while researching this video. I thought it would be all fun and games, but now I know that wildfires can cause tuberculosis, and I live in the Pacific Northwest. So many of you have joined me for this adventure, and I can't even begin to tell you how much that means to me. Thank you so much for all the support, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello everyone! A lot of you have joined me since my last video, and that is amazing! I am now at 100 followers, which is a big milestone for me. I want to thank all of you for your kind comments and your suggestions. I'm hoping that your audio suggestions help me. I do have a microphone. I've just always had it pushed back out of the shot because I always felt strange about it being in the shot. However, apparently this one needs to be closer to me. So we're going to see how this video sounds and see if it works. Thank you again.